Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 3, Episode 4. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Well, Steve, in this episode, you and I are going to delve deeper into the future of stores and this hybrid retail reality that we now operate in. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think we're going to keep coming back to this. It's really this idea that physical retail isn't dead, but it's certainly becoming very different. And so trying to delve into what that really means from an overall business strategy standpoint, what that increasingly means in terms of what sort of stores are going to be needed, what they look like, where they're located, what technology and operations need to change. I think that's part of what we'll get into. You know, it's also interesting. I know we'll touch on this a little bit, but we keep getting a lot of news about store openings and store closings. And Coresight, our friends at Coresight, reported that store closings were down for the first time year over year in I think it's 10 or 12 years. So that's kind of interesting. And then IHL has got a little bit different methodology. They're reporting that for every retailer that is closing stores, there are 4 retailers that are opening stores. So again, kind of playing with this retail apocalypse narrative. But again, I think probably the more interesting thing is, what do those stores look like? What's the role of stores and how is that evolving quickly?
Yeah, that's what I particularly enjoyed about our discussion, because it gets into that kind of long-term decisions and lasting implications. But, you know, back to you better start thinking about it now, because there's some opportunity. And I think you're seeing that in the IHL numbers. There's a lot of stores have closed. People have just rationalized real estate. You know, Starbucks closed hundreds and hundreds of outlets, but not in a we're in trouble way. But let's rationalize, and things are changing. So, you know, I think it's opened up some real estate opportunities. Interestingly, over the course of time, those who are still around can even look at Macy's, right, opening up a smaller format store in probably some real estate maybe that wasn't available to them. So, you know, as some stores come, some stores go. Now, before we go in and start talking about delving into this, let's what kind of things caught your eye in the media last couple of weeks? I saw, you know, you rarely don't talk about Amazon in this, and yesterday was a bit of a milestone, right? So we had Amazon open up their $1.5 billion transportation hub in Kentucky. What are you thinking about? Yeah, exactly. What are you thinking about Amazon these days, and particularly pertaining to logistics?
Well, we continue to see these last mile delivery wars. Whether it's a race to the bottom or not, I guess we'll ultimately see. But there's no question that Amazon, Walmart, Target, and a bunch of these third-party delivery players are trying to get closer and closer to the customer, narrow that delivery window. And so Amazon's just put an amazing amount of money into infrastructure, not only the big facility they opened in Kentucky, but many other facilities, buying more aircraft. So the infrastructure piece of this for Amazon and for others is huge. The other thing I thought was interesting that Amazon appears to be testing in a few markets is changing their delivery fee structure. So as we've gotten into a bunch of times, consumers seem to really love this convenience war and getting things faster. But at the same time, the economics of it for retailers are often pretty terrible. So Amazon and others, I think, are going to keep playing around with, how do we cut the delivery times? How do we narrow those delivery windows? But how do we not take such a bath on providing that service?
Now, in your mind, is that kind of speed to the doorstep a sustainable competitive advantage for Amazon? They seem to be saying that's where we're going to plant our flag in terms of where we're going to win. What do you think?
Well, one of the quotations I often include in my keynote and I include in my book is Seth Godin's, "The problem with the race to the bottom is you might win, or worse, finish second."
Right.
I think probably what Amazon is counting on is that they're going to be able to build this fortress, this incredible cost structure and efficiency that everybody's going to have to chase. And maybe with the exception of Walmart, maybe Target, there aren't many retailers that are going to be able to match Amazon and not have terrible economics. So I think the train's
Mm,
left the station on this. I think Amazon believes they can win, and clearly the infrastructure investments are
yeah,
a big part of that. And it's really, really hard. Again, maybe with the exception of someone like Walmart, to imagine anybody
yeah,
coming remotely close because it's just the cost of establishing it and the
yeah, it's,
volume you need to make it work are just
yeah,
10x,
yeah.
100x for most retailers.
Yeah, it's eye-watering amounts of capital, right? $1.5 billion. This is just another tier. Let's move on to talk about earnings. Another week of earnings. Canada Goose was in the news with their earnings.
Mm.
Wayfair, the Real Real. What any observations from the latest raft of earnings?
Well, I think a couple things are interesting. Wayfair, which I will fully admit to having been wrong. If you had listened to me about the Wayfair stock a couple of years ago, you would have taken very bad advice because the Wayfair stock has generally done
Yeah,
really, really well. Some of that is all the capabilities they built. Some of that is being kind of the right place at the right time in terms of this big move to home furnishings and a big move to online and the biggest player there. But their earnings to me were pretty interesting because we've seen a big move back in terms of volume online, not terribly surprising. Some
yeah,
leverage for them on the expense side, but I think this is maybe pointing to some issues ahead. Another set of earnings I thought were interesting were Canada Goose's earnings, very different kind of business model. They had major increases, certainly year over year because of COVID, but way up compared to 2 years ago. And yet their stock got hammered. Seems to be
yeah.
that investors are worried about this shift to more of their owned direct to
Mm,
consumer stores and e-commerce and de-emphasizing their wholesale partners. What's fascinating to me is it seems like that's the strategy that is winning for players like Nike and a bunch of others. Yet somehow for
yeah,
Canada Goose, that seemed to be a measure of concern. But I think it's a remarkable brand, great results,
mm,
particularly in the face of
yeah.
not great situation for apparel more broadly. So I think that's one to watch. One other one quickly is the Real Real. Actually, we had a bunch of earnings from these secondhand type of apparel manufacturers, and it was a pretty mixed bag. Lots of great, or I shouldn't say mixed bag, very, very strong on the sales side. Again, easier comparisons, but generally pretty disappointing on the earnings side. The Real Real had 70% EBITDA
Mm.
margin, which is an improvement actually over a year ago. So I guess that's good. But to think about losing that much money at this stage in their development, I don't know. That to me is pretty discouraging. But again, not a lot of good trends for most of the
Mm.
apparel players in the past year and a half.
Let's finish on Saks, Hudson's Bay. Lots of news.
Yeah.
Hudson's Bay announced they're following in the footsteps of Saks. Of course, they own each other and splitting off the Hudson's Bay, or Canadians would know it as the Bay business. Ian Nairn, who was the president, is now become president of digital, and someone actually I know, Wayne Drummond. He was a marketing. We were marketing folks together back in the day at HBC. I guess I should have stayed. It turned out really he's a talented guy, but
If
he's
only
now the
to talk them
president of
out of
those
this move,
stores.
perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Wayne, don't stay there. There's no future. So what do you think? I mean, and you got this whole new Saks Works, which is kind of a WeWork meets Saks. I mean, there's lots of interesting stuff going on for sure.
Well, to me, this is either going to be genius or the dumbest move on the planet. I don't think there's much middle ground. I don't
Yeah.
understand the as we've talked about previously, and just following social media. I think the real estate people seem to like the move. Everybody else seems to hate it because it's against this idea that brands are horizontal. That as I always say, silos belong on
Mm,
farms. Digital drives physical.
yeah.
Blah 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 blah. Right, and so they're going in the complete opposite direction of I think probably 99% of retailers have concluded is the right move. And I can't imagine customers are asking for this. So I think it's curious. I think it smacks of desperation. Uh, the
Mm.
the Saks WeWork thing,
Saks Works. Yeah, Saks Works.
on the one hand, certainly working at Neiman Marcus, I'm pretty familiar with this sort of real estate that a luxury department store has. And generally speaking, those stores are way overspaced and there are very much dead areas in parts of the store. So thinking
Sure.
about what you should do in the face of some pretty negative trends, more product being sold online with that third floor space where it used to be the fur department or something. I get it,
Right.
right? Fixed cost, you want to leverage it.
Yeah.
The idea that what the Saks customer is dying to have is co-working space on the third floor of a mall, I don't get it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think
Interesting.
WeWork, certainly, even though they pulled back a lot, the co-working market doesn't seem to be the one that's really booming. So,
Hmm.
and I don't know that the solution to WeWork's issues is to put co-working space in a department store in a mall. So it's curious to me. I get how they might have talked themselves into it being a match made in heaven, but I don't see this being material to either company's success going forward.
Well, one commentary I can make is the gentleman who's running it, Carey, is a skilled retail executive who I work with. Again, another executive I work with who's done quite well. So if anybody can make it work, he can. So be interesting to watch, right? Let's see what happens,
Yeah.
and we'll keep an eye on it. Listen, we've been wrong before, we'll be wrong again, and as you said, it's either going to be seen as genius or like what the heck was going on.
Though to be
Yeah,
fair,
before we get
Michael, we have been right more than we've been wrong. I just need.
That's true. That's true. On the odds, I'm betting on us. There you go. I'm betting on you. All right. Well, listen, before we get to our further discussion, and just want to remind everybody we now have a YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this on your podcast or whatever podcast, please check us out on YouTube. This section is on YouTube, kind of an expanded version. And with that, let's throw to the rest of our discussion all about this next iteration, next discussion around hybridization.